Hey there, and welcome back to the B2B Marketing Asia podcast. My name is Joe Escobedo, and today we'll be talking about how B2B brands in Asia can drive brand to demand. So we're talking about everything from common expectations, channels, content, and intent triggers. And my guest today is Gary Wong, who is Account Director, LinkedIn Marketing Solutions at LinkedIn. Thanks so much for joining, Gary.
Thanks for inviting me, Joe. Loving the cup. I can see you're still having that gesture of holding the cup of Joe.
I do. I can't get rid of it. It's become automatic at this point.
Okay. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Really appreciate you coming on the show. And so one of the reasons we wanted to have you on is you have a lot of experience working in B2B marketing, particularly in Asia. And so I'd love to hear some of the expectations that maybe brands you've worked with in the past have when it comes to lead generation and demand.
I would say like a lot of companies that I work with in B2B and they are in the tech space, and a lot of the time that the first thing they would come to me and ask is like, okay, I need leads, I need MQLs, I want to get people's contact info. And then, but like that's the first thing they would do. But then a lot of the time that because the KPIs and they're sort of like how they be measured on is based on leads. So a lot of the time that like after they push out a white paper, after they push out a piece of ebook, they get all these quality leads or at least the background or the demographic of them are quality. But do they really want to buy? Like, do they really want to get contacted by the sales right away? Do they really want to get contacted by the SDR, BDR right away and set a meeting right away? Not necessarily. And I think that's a very big misconception that brands are getting, or they are just trying to push out like a piece of content, a gated content, and then get the contact information and then pass it to sales right away and hope some of them will become pipeline. I think this is one of the very big misconception that I think companies have when it comes to lead gen or trying to get more business for the company. They just hope every single white paper downloads, ebook download will become pipeline straight away.
Absolutely. And it's very much wishful thinking. Like I always ask them, do you attend, webinars? Do you download ebooks? And like, yeah, of course. And I said, okay, do you automatically want to buy from that, service provider or that particular product? And like, no. And it's like, okay, well, think about it from your customer's point of view. If you feel that way, then why would you send, to your point, an SDR chasing them or sending these nurture drip campaigns, which I always find super annoying if I attended them for a webinar. Most of the webinars I don't even attend. So it goes back to your thing of managing expectations. Just because they download an ebook or a white paper doesn't actually necessarily mean they're interested in anything you do. They may just be interested in that particular topic, which is great. But it goes back to consistency and a long-term strategy. We talked about recently on Clubhouse is how do you think about it from, putting out consistent topics and things that they're interested in, and then eventually getting them to come to you. But once again, we talked about that in Clubhouse. I'd love to get your thoughts in terms of what are some of the channels you see working? Obviously, LinkedIn, we're both biased towards LinkedIn. But what are some of the things that you have seen working for brands that are trying to make the shift from brand to demand?
I would say like very badly, like because I came from LinkedIn, I would definitely say LinkedIn's one of the platform. But even on LinkedIn, there are different channels, right? There's like the paid side, there's like the organic side. Even on the organic side, there's a personal branding side and using your own company page side. So what I've seen is I think personal branding side or using your own personal profile is one channel that is what Gary Vee like to say is underpriced advantage. Basically, there's so many like great profiles out there, like all your target audience are out there, but not a lot of people are posting. Like in statistically, like only 1% of people actually post on LinkedIn. So even for me, for example, I only got like 2,000 something followers, but then some of my post reach can get up to 10,000 or sometimes 15,000. So by that sense, like I think one of the channel is definitely using personal profiles as a way, like for your company. Your company should doing internal marketing to have like exciting content to the sales rep, to the marketing rep, so that they would actually want to push out to their own channel, to their own network. So to build that brand awareness around in the market. And then in the second sense, in the second way, that obviously you still need to do your organic company page, but then the reach is going to be limited. It's usually around 15 to 20%. I still don't see any like companies really hacking the way and get like huge reach from their company content. But I think you still sort of must do it. And a lot of the time that organic company, you can't control who you see, like who see your content. So that's why you go to the paid side. And what I see a lot of people are doing really well. Some of the companies that I see doing really well on the paid side is they're pushing these sort of ungated content out, videos. And the videos is all about inspiration, like painting a picture to their target audience about what is potentially possible, like what their products can potentially help them do, what sort of benefits that they can potentially get from their products, or even client inspiration. Some of the clients are doing this, get their client testimonial to share the experience with the product, share the experience with the solution. I think that really helps. And by them doing that for literally like, one of my clients, they actually did that for 6 to 9 months. And they even have like PRs and like huge events running on top of these sort of like inspirational content. And then what they see is like, when it comes to Q4 or Q1 this year, they are actually seeing a significant lift in terms of pipeline and like conversation coming in, and whenever the sales actually talk to the client and they ask them, oh, where did you hear us from, they actually said LinkedIn. And they even had like some incidents that the client will actually, they screenshot what they saw on LinkedIn, let's say as case study, what they saw on LinkedIn, and then email the sales, I saw that on LinkedIn, can we have a chat? So I would say it's not something that takes 2 weeks, a month to build. It takes my client 6 to 9 months to see actually significant result at the end.
And that's another important thing to remember is understanding the sales cycle, particularly in B2B, which tends to be longer. So most start at 3 months, some go up to 2-3 years, depending on the ticket size. So it's important for marketers and sales to both understand that, even if we get these leads, they may not even close for another several months. So to your point, what can you do to keep them excited and engaged with your brand? You mentioned a couple different things, one of which was sharing these middle of the funnel videos, talking about maybe what the product can do, more inspirational, aspirational type of messaging, or even customer testimonials, case studies. So you talked about in the corporate side, as well as the personal branding side, getting your team members to get involved, to post actively on their channels, and thus getting the demand for them. I mean, I'm a big believer in this. I mean, it's why we kind of built our business on educating sales teams on how to leverage LinkedIn and how to leverage content to get opportunities to them. And I've seen this across multiple, the best performing salespeople I've seen across, whether it be tech or finance or real estate, whatever it is, they all consistently do the same thing. They all consistently have a strong personal brand, and therefore, prospects are coming to them for opportunities. And it goes back to your point about, the reason that I believe company pages underperform are for a couple different reasons. One of which, we relate to people much more than we do, the brand. So if I see Gary posts, I'm going to be far more inclined to engage with it than I would if it was a LinkedIn corporate post. So that's one thing.
Yeah. That reminded me of like one of the posts that I saw earlier, which is like you got Bill Gates and Microsoft, right? And you got like Tim Cook and Apple, right? And even on LinkedIn or another social media channel or whatever, like you can see actually like Bill Gates, he actually got more followers and stuff than the company itself, and same as Tim Cook, or let's say like Elon Musk versus Tesla. So the person on his own, like the face of the company, being a thought leader, actually got more followers and actually got more engagement than the company.
Absolutely. And I'm not surprised at all by that, because like I said, they all have strong personal brands, strong personalities, and people gravitate towards them. And I think it happens in a lot of different organizations. And the misconception here is it doesn't necessarily have to be the CEO all the time. I mean, yes, they should have a strong presence online, but also your directors, your managers, even your interns. All of these people have an impact in terms of your perception of the brand. And a lot of the times, how I find out about new companies is not by actually going through company pages and finding them. I will be following different people, and someone puts out interesting content. And I say, okay, go to their profile, see where they work at, find out more about them that way. So actually taking the personal brand to the corporate brand, I think works out quite commonly. And I've heard this among a lot of different buyers who are, how they find out about different companies. They actually find out it from the individual employee, the content they're posting, and then find out from the corporate side.
Mm-hmm. Yes. This is a lot of the time, happens a lot of the time.
Now the challenge, and I've seen this recently, working with a client currently in the B2B tech space, and we drafted some social posts for them. And what we noticed is that all the sales team were basically copying and pasting that social post into their personal one, which I think, once again, it doesn't hurt to use it as kind of a template, but I think there's a danger there in just replicating, copying and pasting. Everyone has the same copy. So if you're on the corporate side and you're wondering, okay, how can you get people engaged? Yes, you can send them some kind of templates, but also encourage them and show how they can actually share content. So if they're sharing an article or a piece of content, how does this relate to their specific audience? Because they shouldn't be targeting the same audience if you're in sales. You should be targeting different accounts, different markets, different personas, whatever it is. But that piece of content or your opinion should, appeal to that specific audience. What are your thoughts?
And it's just lazy, right, Joe? It's just lazy posting, lazy sharing, right? Like if you think about it, like even if the same piece of content, different people have different opinions, different people have different personality, different tones, different style of writing. My style of writing is different than your style of writing. Like even we're talking about the same thing, brand to demand, content marketing, demand gen, whatever, right? So that is just, I would see that as just lazy sharing, lazy posting, not thinking about what you actually write as a person. And you write like you talk. I think you should write like you talk anyway.
Absolutely. And I think that is one of the things that is unfortunately happens on LinkedIn and other channels as well. Just lazy marketing. People are lazy. They just copy and paste, or they hit the share of the like button. That's all they do. For me, it actually has a detrimental impact in terms of their personal brand. I generally unfollow people who do that because they're just, for me, spamming. They're clogging up my feed with unnecessary things. So that's important to keep in mind as well, too, that if you are someone who is just literally liking everything or just copying and pasting links without adding anything to it, I would recommend folks just not even post anything, because for me, it's not adding any value to the conversation. It's like going up to a cocktail party and you join a conversation's already going on, and you just repeat exactly verbatim everything that someone else has just said. It's not adding any value, and I think the same thing applies to LinkedIn and social in general.
Agree, 100% agree.
Awesome. So we talked about some of the channels. Let's talk about content, which we talked about lazy marketing. What does actually good content and good B2B marketing look like?
I think you hit a lot of points. You were saying like value added. I think value added is a very broad word. So when I think about value, you need to think about, is your content doing something useful? And your content is useful when it's like when it explains something, definition. Maybe your target audience, or maybe some of the simple terms your target audience doesn't even understand. Like I know in marketing we talk about MQL, SQL, but that term might not be relevant to the CEO or people outside of marketing might not understand what that means. So can you explain what SEO is, the definition of it? Or maybe we talk about brand to demand. Some people might not even understand what a brand to demand strategy is. And then can we explain some of these terms, some of these strategies, some of these tactics to people? I think definition is one of the things that I value. And then you can think about what I was going to say. A guide, something that people can follow, something people can actually use to follow the step by step to execute. Because by them following step by step, they can actually get some better results out of it. So are you producing some sort of content like that? And then also you can think about like executional content, as in what you're sharing to people, you can actually make them more efficient. Let's say a template, is it a tool assessment, or is it like a checklist, things like that. And last but not least, I think it will be good to also share like maybe some of the calculation stuff, right? It's sort of similar to definition, like how you calculate something, how is this being calculated, what are the benchmarks in the industry, things like that. I think what content that works well on B2B is adding value. And by adding value, it means you need to produce content that sort of have these sort of elements here, have definition, help people execute, like as in templates and stuff, like a step-by-step guide that people can actually follow and get better results out of it. And last but not least, just numbers, like benchmark calculation, how is something calculated, what's the benchmark of the industry, and like just statistic and data. I think these sort of content would work well. I think that would become sort of like an outline of what you need to include in every single content that you push out, and then you think about, okay, what topics, what format and stuff. But I think you need to sort of have an outline of what's good and what's value added first. What does value added mean first, and then think about what topics and stuff that you need to develop.
Yeah, no, you bring up some really good points. What you're thinking about both sides, the right and left brain. You talked about using numbers, benchmarks, statistics, and the other side using things that are more aspirational. And then you bring up another good point around definitions. I think one piece we were working on just a few minutes ago was around ABM, account-based marketing, and that's the buzzword in B2B marketing right now. Everyone wants to do it. No one really knows how to do it very well, or they think they do. But the definition is all over the place. And I think it's good to articulate that, set the context in terms of what is your viewpoint on that. Digital transformation was one that was, been for a couple of years. But I just want to share a quick anecdote in terms of something that happened to me recently. I posted something on LinkedIn yesterday, and I was asking about, someone's feedback on pilots replacing RFPs in the future. And this person responded, no, that's not going to happen. So I just sent him a direct message and I saying, hey, why don't you think, pilots may replace RFPs one day? And he's like, well, I wouldn't take a flight that had an automatic RFP system replacing a pilot. I was like, so he was obviously thinking about, airplanes, aeronautics, and things like that. And where I was talking about it for the marketing and procurement side. But it was just, that for me was like a classic example of like two very, very different, what I thought was very clear context was obviously very, very different to him. And so I think spelling it out, particularly on things like you said, MQLs, SQLs, ABM, all those things that pop up all the time. First, articulating what is your stance, how you define it. And he talked about using the left side, right brain. For me, I try to simplify it as much as possible because I'm a dummy. So content I create should do two things. It should get my client or prospect promoted, and on the flip side, it should avoid them from getting fired. I think that's what drives every single one of us. I don't care who you are, what you do. That's basically what we all want. We all want, a better position, better title, more money, whatever it is. And on the flip side, we don't want to get fired, or we don't want to get demoted, or we don't want to get scolded or whatever, reprimanded by our boss. Like those are the fundamental drivers that drive everything, across every B2B space. So I think it's important to remember that. And you bring up another good point in terms of like, I always encourage people to create FAQs. So frequently asked questions around your particular, not even your particular products and services, which you should be doing, but also around kind of questions that your audience is having. So the way I always create content, I've done this for many, many years, is literally ask questions, have meetings, find out what kind of questions people are asking, jot that down, and then create a LinkedIn post or create a video off the back of that. Because I know that that's something people are asking, and if enough prospects are having that question, then look, I can go ahead and solve that question, or hopefully address it for a broader use. So that's something that I try to incorporate into my content as well.
Yeah, a lot of people would actually trying to get engaged, just looking at engagements, right? And a lot of the time this can't be measured, but a lot of the time that you just need to be out there, like clients, or look at what comments, like the comments that you have in your post, the questions that people have on your video, maybe the question that people have on your podcast or live video, and then I mean you can leverage them and use them as your next topic.
Absolutely. I mean, that's how I did. I wrote like 100 articles when I was at Forbes, and people always ask me, "How did you do it?" And I said, I was constantly speaking to people to find out different stories. So if someone had an inspirational or aspirational story I wanted to share, I would tell it. If they I was getting enough questions, I would find an expert and I would interview them and I would feature their insights. Even the podcast now, a lot of the topics we have are ones that I'm either asked about or I hear about from different communities, and so that really serves as fodder for a lot of the content we put. You can tell I'm very passionate about content. So I'll add one more thing that popped up when you were speaking is looking at specific prospects' LinkedIn profiles, if they have like a job description, and seeing what kind of responsibilities, what kind of things they talk about. So if it's a previous role, they'll usually include, okay, here are my achievements. So that'll give you a sense in terms of what are some of the things that matter to them. So never making the assuming that you know exactly what they're doing. I think that could be one way, is firstly speaking to them and then finding out. Secondly, it could be going to their specific LinkedIn profiles. The third thing, which I just thought about, is also looking at job descriptions. So job descriptions lay out kind of roles and responsibilities and kind of KPIs and stuff like that. So just jotting that down in terms of a master file, looking at that, uploading that to a word cloud and seeing what are the most common things that come up. So what goes back to what I was saying, how can you help your client, your prospect get promoted? And then on the flip side, how do you avoid them getting fired? Because if you get them promoted, it's one of those things, they will take you with them. And I think that's how we've essentially built our business. We've had clients that have, got promoted, taken us with them, or they've started new companies, taking us with them. And so that's, for me, is really the power of B2B, which is why I enjoy B2B marketing versus B2C, is because you can build that long-term relationship. But I don't think enough B2B marketers think about it in that way. They think about it like a short-term, quarter to quarter, which I get because there are sales KPIs, but it does have a detrimental impact in terms of B2B marketing.
True. Like, let's think about it, Joe. Let's think about it even on the agency side of things. Like when it comes to B2B, like because a lot of B2B marketers, a lot of B2B like marketing department, they are measured on leads, and they measure on leads. So let's say the agency or the people that they work with, they would mainly look at, okay, cost per leads. Which platform is getting them the cheapest cost per lead? We're sort of going back to this lead stuff again. Which platform is getting the cheapest cost per lead? What creative, what campaign is getting them the cheapest cost per lead? But eventually, what matters to marketing is still going to be like business pipeline and revenue. How much of the pipeline or how much revenue like marketing is actually being able to bring, right? But then, like, I don't see a lot of agency would actually go into deeper in the conversation in terms of working with the clients into the CRM, look at, okay, are these leads actually turning into actual revenue, or what can we do to actually convert these leads into revenue, or what can we do so that in the future people come in, they want a meeting right away, and they can actually become a pipeline. I think that's another thing about agency and the marketing department, how they measure on what the agency looked at as their performance index. It's not driving direct impact to the business, in my sense. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, once again, it goes back to lazy marketing on both sides. I think, to be honest, I think, a lot of marketers are trying to do the bare minimum so they can hit their leads KPI. Same on agency side, they want to do the bare minimum just so they can get paid. For me, I think the clients we work with and the partners we're working with, we are having those conversations such that we're kind of skipping leads and we're going straight to who is your account, your target account, who are you trying to close? We'll talk about the specific person we're trying to build relationships with, and then we'll work backwards from there. So this is a new model we're rolling out with a couple different B2B tech companies, which drumroll, we should be launching that, announcing that very soon. But that's something that we've been working on, is getting as close to we can as revenue. Because as an entrepreneur, I think I realize that better than anyone else. I've seen companies who don't manage revenue very well, and they end up, doing layoffs and all kinds of bad things happen to the company. So leads are great. It is, indicator, but is that what the CEO really cares about? No. Do they even know what leads are half the time, or MQLs or SQLs? Probably not. What they care about is, money deposited in the bank, and that's all that matters. So to your point, what can not only the agency, but what can marketers do? If you're a mid-level manager marketer, what can you do to, how can you work with sales? And this still is a massive gap in most organizations. The only reason I'm able to do it very effectively because I wear both hats. So for me, it's easier said than done. But the most effective marketers are those who really understand the sales process, understand the target accounts. So when I was working with a B2B tech company last year, one of the things we did is we caught up with the sales team, and we said, okay, which accounts are you targeting this quarter? Which accounts are you trying to upsell or cross-sell to this quarter? And they would give us a list of accounts, and then they would have, okay, here's our priority accounts, and so on. So for us, that was gold, because without that, we're kind of just throwing money, we're kind of throwing messaging out there, but we don't know if it's working. But if I can go back to a salesperson, and it was really good because we were rated by salespeople in terms of how successful we were in terms of our content. But I think it was a good exercise because we could say, okay, this training we did for this prospect or this piece of content we put out, did it or did it not have an impact in terms of what you were doing? And that they either gave us a yes or no, depending on if it did. So I think that was a good kind of benchmark in terms of figuring out, did it have an actual impact in terms of closed deals? Fortunately for us, it did have a big upswing in terms of additional revenue we generated. But we wouldn't have known that because usually it's the sales team that's logging everything to Salesforce. They're logging, all the information in there. You wouldn't necessarily know it if you're a marketer. So that is something that I learned to do in my previous role, and I think it's been super helpful for me since.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it starts with having a good relationship between marketing and the sales team. So in some companies, the relationship might not be that strong. Sometimes, like you might work in a company that is more sales dominant. Marketing is sort of like a supporting factor that sales tell marketing what to do. When it comes to marketing, I don't know if you get that sense, but like you feel like everyone think that they can be a marketer. Like sales would be like, okay, why don't you just push out this piece of content? Why don't you just create something like this and push out? Like I think is how do we have like both teams sort of respect what each other do? Like marketing can have like firm agreements to sales. Okay, this is the sort of leads that you want. Okay, I would catch up with the sales team regularly to make sure that the leads quality is good. And then, but in the other hand, if I have like high intent leads or like really quality leads, I want your sales team to follow up with them within 24 hours. Having these sort of like agreements and understand the impact of each other. Like sales and marketing goes hands in hand. They are sort of like partners in crime together. It's not like one supporting each. It's like they both need to work close together. It's like a closed loop. They can't survive without each other. So I think it's having that relationship, having that transparency, and having that trust, which sometimes it takes time to build as well. Like, which is it's good to see what you did there, Joe, because obviously you built that trust, but a lot of companies still lacking that trust.
Exactly. And I think it's a very good point in terms of being, I took the initiative to build those relationships. I think what would have been nice if the leader said, okay, you guys job shadow each other, even if it's one day out of the month. You marketing, you job shadow sales, you job shadow marketing, because otherwise you don't really know what other ones do. Like when I was in marketing for most of my career, I just assumed that, sales, they show up to meetings and they say, okay, sign, don't sign, that's it. But once I kind of shifted to a sales role, I was like, well, that couldn't be any farther from the truth. And now the salespeople will tell me, marketing, all they do is, sit around, they put together fluffy copy and they have these fun brainstorming sessions, and that's all they do. So I think to your point, it's about really understanding. And for me, like I said, I wear both hats, so I understand very clearly. But I think if you don't, job shadow, sit in on some of those sales meetings so you get a sense in terms of what are the questions people are asking, what kind of information do prospects need in order to close. All these things can help you become a better marketer. So really, really good advice. There's one more thing that I wanted to get your thoughts on, which is really important, which is signals or intent triggers. So before we talk about that, maybe you want to quickly define what is a signal or an intent trigger for you.
I think we sort of mentioned that already, right? Just like what we talked about. If someone downloaded your piece of white paper, someone downloaded your piece of guide, like their intent is just for that content purely. And then what we should do, we should actually base on that intent to bring them to redirect them to the correct path. It's not like every single one who downloaded the white piece of white paper has to be contacted by a sales or a BDR or sales development board, a guy or a BD representative. Like they shouldn't need to go through that user experience. So what you need to think about is like, okay, for every single piece of content that you push out or people watch the video, this is more like awareness video. And then people download this piece of content, people attended this webinar. Like you need to identify their intent and then pass them follow up with the correct path, and then based on that you need to basically they go on this loop and keep nurturing and until you see a signal from them that okay, I actually want to see this demo. Okay, I actually want to have a look at this product data sheet or whatever. Okay, I actually want a free consultation. I don't want to look at your content and figure out myself anymore. And then until you have that signal of them actually actively seeking for products, and then you link them up with sales team. And then these are the people that your sales and SDR or BDR actually wants to talk to. And then that's how you build trust with the sales team overall in the long term. So I think it's really looking at the intent of the things that they do to your content and what stage that they are at the journey or the signal that they give you to tell if they are ready to be contacted or talk to a sales to have a meeting with the sales. I think that's it.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of folks will be asking the question, how can you actually identify their intent at any given point?
Oh, this is difficult. Like for me, I think most of the people are always on the low intent stage. Like majority of people, they are always at the low intent stage. They are just like browsing the content. If they see a piece of interesting content, they would want to click and look at it, download. I think how I see is like I think I would like to copy your approach, Joe. Something that you're engaged at everything, or you're engaged at most of the stuff, and then only people who wants to actively subscribe to your newsletter, they will subscribe to it, so that you have an engaging community. So basically, like it means like you engage at everything. So everything you push out, every single content that you push out is educational, is trying to help them, is aspiring. And then also, if they want to actively stay actively see your communication, see your newsletter, they can actively subscribe to your newsletter. And then, but that's the part that they're still trying to look for information, right? And then all you're doing in here is just being the top of mind, being the top of mind, that if they think of a certain problem, they think of a certain category, they'll think of you as a person, they will think of you as a company. And then the high intent stage is like basically you have a landing page, and then eventually after they go through all this information and you stay on the top of mind, they would actually want to come and search for you when they actively have a problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's how I see it.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree. I think one thing that's always helpful is I learned this from other podcasts, is asking for consent. So for example, if you have a webinar, at the bottom it has like a checkbox that says, would you like to be contacted by sales, or would you like a free demo, whatever it is. Being explicit. If they check no, if they don't check it, then don't even bother them. But if
or one thing you can actually do is like in all those emails that you send, in all those like follow-up stuff that you send, give people options. Okay, you can download this piece of white paper, you can watch this video that we recorded, or you can talk to our sales directly, talk to our free consultant directly, or do you want to have a quick chat right away? I mean, give people options. If they click and they want to have a free chat, and then it shows that they have an intent that they actually want to actively solve the problem.
Yeah, I think to your point, like I said, the buyers have all the power now. They have all the information. They'll come to you when you're ready. So I think it's about, even the dating analogy, not being too aggressive. Otherwise, their person gets turned off and they kind of walk away. So one thing I try to do is I actively try not to sell. It sounds very counterintuitive, but I spent most of my career failing trying to sell, and it was just miserable. So now I don't try to sell. If anything, I say don't buy unless you're really, really ready, or unless you really like what we do. If not, I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time as well. Instead, what I do is I say, okay, if I find those high engagers, whether it's people on LinkedIn or the newsletter or whatever it is, I might drop them a direct message saying, hey, I noticed you're engaging with a lot of our ABM content and so on. I just found a piece or interview that was quite interesting. Let me know if you want to share it. Something as simple as that. So my goal is never to sell them anything, because like I said, I don't know what their intent is at any given time. Like you said, most of the time, I think 95% of people are not looking to buy, particularly when it comes to B2B. It's not like you're, passing by a convenience store and you see a Snickers bar and you're like, yeah, let me get that. If you're looking for that cloud computing, it's like, okay, well, I might be doing it one day, but to your point, most people are not in that stage. So what can you do to keep them inside, keep them engaged, keep your brand top of mind? I think that's where a lot of the times brands really forget about how strong the brand actually is. Because I was interviewing Gartner and they said that I think it was about 70% of people just pick the incumbents or the big boys in terms of the names, because look, they don't want to risk it. The brand is something that they know, and they're going to go with that. And I think that's where a lot of people underestimate the power of branding. If you look at even the phone you pick, most people pick Samsung or Apple iPhone, and it's for a reason. It's simply because of the brand. Like there's Xiaomi and there's a couple other brands that are, in terms of technology wise, are probably better. But it goes back to the brand. How strong is the brand? And Apple has dominated for years because they've invested a lot in terms of their branding. So the same principles still apply. Humans are humans, whether they're buying B2C or B2B, but it's important to have that in mind.
Exactly. I think I actually recently ran a content workshop on that, talking about like the impact of brand, and even just think about it, right? I was using email marketing tools as an example. You can go on Google and search email marketing tools, and then you can see a list of ads, SEMs. You can see a list of ads. And then even though that person is actively looking for the best email marketing tools, like among a bunch of ads, they are always going to choose the one that they've seen before. They're always going to choose the one that they heard before, and have a look at the pricing or how it works and stuff like that. And if you don't build a brand, you would just your company would start to become I would say like more like a commodity, like gold, water, steel. Like it's hard to tell a difference when it comes to the bottom of the funnel. It's hard to tell a difference between how you are different compared to other software or SaaS or email marketing tools that are out there. It's just very hard, right?
We have a question that I want to. It's probably more on the sales side, but you ask how to handle essentially a prospect declining your offer. And I have a lot of experience with this because I've had a lot of offers decline over the years. But how do you tackle that as a salesperson?
How do you handle? I think it's more understanding the why. Like, need to ask them, like really dig deep into the three whys methodology, right? Asking them like understand the true fact, the true reason behind why they decline you. Like, is it because of really our products? Is it because of the internal structure? Is it because pricing? Like, understand the why. You don't want to get declined and not understanding the why is, and then you need to find out if that why is something that you can fix, your product can fix, your team can fix, and you can help them remove the why. If you can, then offer to help them, offer to see how you can help them. If this is something that you can't fix, then at least you get a feedback to understand, okay, maybe this sort of client is not going to be who I am going to be targeting later, or who I want to reach out to later. Maybe I need to ask questions early to identify if these people have this why problem, because I can't fix this problem. I need to go back to the other companies that have the other whys that I can probably fix.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very good point. One thing a couple things that I do, one of which is, to your point, try to figure out why, because a lot of times they won't tell you the real why. So I'll ask who actually got it. Who do they actually select? Sometimes they'll tell you, sometimes they won't. But then I'll look at and I'll do kind of a comparison in terms of what we're doing. And I did this recently because we didn't get a project, unfortunately. But I looked at apples to apples, and if I looked at who we were competing with, I would have guessed that they would have picked that person for a couple different reasons. The reasons that they wouldn't admit publicly, but are inherently in terms of psychologically human behavior. If I knew who that person was competing with, I knew they would have picked them because I would pick them as well for that specific project. So that's something that's really, really hard to do, particularly if you lose a project you've been working on for a long time or you thought you were going to win. It's very painful. And so one thing you gotta do is really step out, take a look back and say, okay, would you have picked that person if you were in their shoes? And sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no. But at least it gives you a sense in terms of, if I see it as a yes, I know, okay, some of the things I could have done better or we could have done differently, some things that were just completely out of our control. And that gives me a little bit of solace so I don't cry myself to sleep at night. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the question. That was a good one. Gary, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all of your insights today. A lot of good practical strategies that people can take home and apply. The last question is, how can people get in touch with you and find out more about what you do?
LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn, follow me on LinkedIn. Just type Gary and Gary Wong LinkedIn, and then you can probably find my profile and you can connect with me. Yeah, thanks, Joey. Like, super fun. I know last time I invited you to my clubhouse, and this time you invited me to your podcast / live video. It has been a fun journey. Like, get me thinking a lot from the stuff that you said. So awesome. Yeah, pretty fun.
Great to hear that. Thanks so much, Gary. Really, really appreciate you coming on the show. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to share it. So many good practical tips in here. Your colleagues will love you. You'll hopefully get promotions and so on. So thank you guys so much. We really appreciate you joining us. Stay safe, take care, and we'll see you soon, guys. Bye.